As you can see, we have a bit to get through in this lecture/documentary. We'll begin talking about the natural resources of Appalachia, Tennessee marble, the marble industry in East Tennessee before the Civil War, the development of the marble industry in the Knoxville area, marble quarries and mills in the Knoxville area. We'll take a trip to Meads Quarry and the Ross and Republic Marble Quarry. We'll then head over to the Candoro Marble Company, then off to a neighborhood of Knoxville along Sutherland Avenue called the Marble City, and then we'll end the Fort Sanders neighborhood. Between the end of the Civil War and the 1920s, the United States became one of the world's largest industrial economies. Fueling this growth was a trifecta of forces that included new industrial technologies, such as the widespread adoption of steam power for manufacturing processes, rapid urbanization, and waves of European immigration. Cities expanded, increased in density, middle-class consumer culture sought more and more goods, and urban labor pools swelled with unskilled European and African American workers. Industrialists sought new sources of minerals, coal, and timber to fuel this new American economy. As Appalachia's resource abundance and relative proximity to the expanding urban centers of the Northeast, Chicago, as well as cities of the New South, allured wealthy industrialists, old romantic notions of life in Appalachia as something from a simpler, long-past time changed to views of Appalachia as an area full of hillbillies, drunken and violent, a people who violated all the norms of urban genteel middle-class culture. Major newspapers and magazines echoed industrialists, claiming that industrialization and economic progress were the only sure cures for what ailed Appalachia. Expanding industrial capacity for the manufacture of iron and steel, for building materials, boats, consumer goods, machines, and tools made coal the most valuable natural resource in Appalachia. Soon industrialists sought their fortunes in the major Appalachian coal fields in central and southern West Virginia, southwestern Virginia, eastern Kentucky, East Tennessee, and northern Alabama. However, coal-hungry industrialists faced a challenge in Appalachia. The region's transportation infrastructure was lacking. Before the Civil War, eastern Tennessee and southwestern Virginia were the railroad hubs of the region, connecting Appalachia to Atlanta, Nashville, Charleston, South Carolina, and points in Ohio. To reach and transport Appalachia's coal and timber out of the region, industrialists transformed the Appalachian landscape with new railroads, including narrow gauge lines that wound their way through the hills, hollers, and mountain passes on their way to coal seams and lumber camps and mills. As much as rail lines crossed the Appalachian landscape in a network like capillaries of capital, coal mining reshaped the social landscape of Appalachia, drawing both rural and urban Appalachians, working-class folks, white and black, as well as immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe, to work in the coal fields. From 1880 to 1930, coal mining operations in Appalachia built over 600 company towns. And, as Richard Straw estimates, 78% of all coal miners and their families in Appalachia during this period lived in a company-owned town. Although coal, particularly the coal fields of central Appalachia, came to dominate the popular image of what resource extraction in Appalachia looked like, the region offered many other resources for industrialists in the late 19th and early 20th centuries: mica, copper, iron, lead, zinc, phosphate, salt, turpentine, and, particularly in western North Carolina and East Tennessee, lumber. Throughout Appalachia, the timber industry created fewer permanent towns than did coal mining. But the industry's lumber camps, mill sites, and narrow-gauge railroads crisscrossed the mountains, particularly of southern Appalachia. Lumber companies bought vast tracts of land in East Tennessee and western North Carolina and harvested the region's old-growth forests to such a degree that by 1930, most old-growth forests in southern Appalachia had been cleared for logging, leaving a forest landscape that is even today dominated by secondary growth forest. Marble, or rather builder's limestone, was another natural resource of Appalachia, but the geographic extent of the marble industry in Appalachia was not as widespread as coal or timber. Before we talk about marble in Tennessee, we need to acknowledge the difference between marble as a geologist would categorize it and marble as a builder would understand it. For a geologist, marble is a metamorphic rock composed of recrystallized carbonate minerals, basically limestone that has metamorphosed or changed in chemical and structural content due to prolonged exposure to heat and pressure. Whereas for a builder, marble, quote unquote, is any limestone that is capable of taking a good polish, that is suitable for high-grade construction work or decorative or ornamental work. It is this latter sense of the term when we refer to the limestones of East Tennessee as Tennessee marble. These limestones formed hundreds of millions of years ago at the bottom of shallow, calm, warm marine waters, the deposition of sediment over millennia, mixed with the calcium carbonate-rich shells and the bones of marine life, forming a sedimentary rock that geologists would identify as limestone, but that in the building trades of East Tennessee came to be known as Tennessee marble. The marbles of East Tennessee are part of a large formation of limestone that extends from the Virginia border southwest through Hawkins, Granger, Union, Knox, Sevier, and Blount counties. However, commercial quarrying operations of East Tennessee marble were, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, concentrated in the area around Knox, Sevier, and Blount counties. Throughout East Tennessee, marble deposits varied in their age of deposition, in their chemical and crystalline structure, in their proportions of carbonated minerals, lime, and iron oxide. These variations created a wide range of colors. Among the most preferred by Tennessee marble quarry operators were pink, chocolate, and cedar. However, the range of colors included cream, yellow, red, gray, and blue. Although extensive commercial operations in East Tennessee did not get underway until the mid-1870s, marble was a local resource for building use, gravestones, and furnishings well before the Civil War. For instance, in 1797, Francis Alexander Ramsey hired architect Thomas Hope and mason Seth Smith to design and build, with the help of Ramsey's enslaved African and African American workers, his two-story federal-style home at Swan Pond, east of Knoxville. If you look closely at the original structure, the two-bay side chimneyed structure, not the addition to the rear. If you look over the windows, you'll see pink marble coursework. If you look at the corners, you'll see blue or pink coining. Within 20 years of Ramsey's construction of his home at Swan Pond, travelers and geologists in East Tennessee began to remark about the availability of this marble for building purposes. Commercial quarrying operations began sometime in the 1830s, certainly by 1838, with the organization of the Rogersville Marble Company in Hawkins County, northeast of Knoxville. The company operated a quarry 9 miles southwest of Rogersville. The quarry was known as the Federal Quarry because marble extracted from the Rogersville location was shipped to Washington, D.C. for use in the construction of the United States Capitol building. Marble operations in the Rogersville area continued for several decades, but by the 1850s, the industry's focus shifted to opening quarries in the area around Knoxville. In 1855, state geologist James Stafford reported that Colonel John Williams, a prominent Knoxvillian and former U.S. Senator, had taken ownership of a fine quarry a few miles east of Knoxville, which had already been worked by several marble companies. The quarry was in the area known as Forks of the River, near Francis Alexander Ramsey's house. However, it does not seem that significant commercial quarrying operations got underway in Knoxville until the middle of the 1870s. And of note, several of the earliest and most successful marble companies in the area got their start through a network of businessmen associated with an 1871 to 1874 effort to provide building material for the construction of the first federal building project in Knoxville, the Knoxville Customs House and Post Office, seen here. In 1873, George W. Ross, who was the paymaster for the Customs House, went into business with William Patrick, his brother James, and J.H. Holman to form the Knoxville Marble Company. The company purchased a quarry in the Forks of the River area, hired 30 men, and worked using steam power to drill and saw marble slabs, which were then hoisted with derricks, you can see in the image here, placed on mule-drawn carts, dragged from the quarry to the river, placed on flat-bottom boats, which then made a 4-mile trek down the river to railroad. Two of George Ross's sons followed in their father's footsteps in the marble business, was John M. Ross. His new Ross Marble Company opened a quarry east of downtown Knoxville on the south bank of the Tennessee River, and operated the quarry into the early 1890s as the Ross Quarry, when he sold his company to the Republic Marble Company that had operated quarries southwest of Knoxville in the community of Concord. The merged company, under the presidency of Frank S. Meade, pictured here of the two gentlemen on the right of the image, he is standing on the left in the lighter clothing, closed the original Ross Quarry and opened a larger quarry named Meade's Quarry, about a mile south-southeast of the original Ross Quarry on a railroad spur that connected south to the Tennessee River. And we'll take a look in a few minutes at the operations of both the Meade's Quarry and the Ross Quarry. By the turn of the 20th century, the East Tennessee marble industry was one of the top producing areas in the United States. Between 1890 and 1910, more than a dozen marble companies operated quarries and mills in the Knox, Sevier, and Blount County area. In many cases, quarries sold unfinished blocks of marble direct from the quarry. However, many marble companies established their own mills and other marble finishing businesses throughout the Knoxville area. Pictured here, for instance, is the interior of the Candoro Marble Company mill. The Candoro Marble Company was a subsidiary of the John J. Craig Marble Company. We'll visit the Candoro Marble Company in just a few minutes. Mills provided opportunities for cutting, polishing, and finishing marble, either as high-grade slabs for building construction, as well as other architectural elements and furnishings. By the turn of the century, many Knoxville Marble Company's mill operations became sprawling complexes. Pictured here, for instance, is the mill and sales room of the Candoro Marble Company in South Knoxville. The mills of the Knoxville Marble Company, the Ross and Republic Company, the Tennessee Producers Marble Company, the United States Marble Company, and, largest of all, the mill of the Evans Marble Company, employed hundreds of workers, and reshaped the suburban landscape of Knoxville. Tennessee Marble left these mills for use in high-grade building material, architectural elements. It also left its polished slabs ready for furniture manufacturers to use it for tabletops, end tables. It left for mantle dealers to sell as marble mantelpieces, and it also left in slabs for cemetery headstone dealers as well. In the 1880s and 1890s, as much as 50% of all the marble coming from these mills ended up in construction use. However, that began to decline, and rapidly so, Much of this collapse came from competition. California and Vermont were continuing to produce high quality marble products, and customers were more and more seeking more affordable foreign marble from Italy, Turkey, and elsewhere. By the 19 teens and 1920s, the East Tennessee marble industry was getting into fairly dire straits, and the uses of Tennessee marble were expanding for less glamorous purposes as limestone, gravel, and lime. So let's drive over to the Island Home neighborhood. It's a nice day in March, almost 80 degrees, blue skies, flowers are coming out, trees have new leaves. Almost a nice enough day to make you forget we're in the middle of a pandemic. Our destination this morning is the Iams Nature Center on Island Home Avenue, southeast of downtown on the south bank of the Tennessee River. Iams is a popular spot for Knoxvillians most of the time. A decade ago or so, when the city of Knoxville acquired the properties of the old Ross and Republic Company quarries, the city partnered with Iams Nature Center to manage the quarries. Iams and the city installed a parking lot, improved the trail access, and made safety improvements along the now filled with water Meads Quarry. The place has been popular. Frankly, I didn't think on a Saturday morning in the middle of a pandemic I would arrive to find 40 cars in the gravel parking lot at the quarry. I did notice that social distancing means that the Yeehaw Brewery craft beer outpost at Meads Quarry was closed. But please mind you, if you come here in cheerier times, observe all of the expected behaviors, including making sure that you leave your potty mouth at home. Since social distancing Knoxville style on a warm day in late March means bringing your dog, your kids, your family, your neighbors, your church group, all out to Meads Quarry, I decided to head up to the Ross Quarry instead. If you may remember, the Ross Quarry was established by John M. Ross after he became president of the Knoxville Marble Company after his father, George Ross's death. John M. Ross operated the Ross Quarry until the early 1890s, when he sold his interests to the Republic Marble Company. The combined operation soon closed the Ross Quarry and focused their work on the lower altitude Meads Quarry closer to the Tennessee River. After the 1920s, as the Meads Quarry operation faced declining revenues and a shrinking market for building marble and furniture marble, the operation shifted over to the production of lime and limestone gravel, and that was profitable enough that the quarry stayed in business until 1978. One of the attractions of Meads Quarry, other than being right along Island Home Avenue, is that the quarry is currently filled with water. One of the dangers of quarrying operations along the floodplain of the Tennessee River is that you hit the water table, and that pretty much ends your quarrying operation. When you finally arrive at the Ross Quarry, the first thing you notice is forest. When the quarry closed, rain and a high water table washed enough sediment into the basin of the quarry to provide a foundation for a secondary growth forest. Only if you look closely can you see the exposed marble surrounding the quarry. And as you walk further down the trail, you notice pile after pile of discarded marble blocks. Stepping down into the quarry access, you're confronted by a block marble wall that was piled up to seal off the basin of the quarry, leaving only one point of access, a small keyhole entry into the quarry itself. On the quarry wall there, you see a series of drill marks. As stepping down into the basin of the quarry on this side and approaching that marble block wall. On either side of the keyhole, you see the lines of drill marks and channeling marks on the surface of the marble blocks forming that wall. And then climbing down into the basin proper of the quarry. All of the exposed walls are covered by those channeler and drill marks. The ground in the basin of the quarry is a mix of lime, limestone, gravel, and mud. With the quarry walls looming from 3 to 5 stories above your head. Several blocks of discarded marble sit in the middle of the quarry basin. You could see the channel marks on each side, the regularity of the pneumatic drilling machine. Time to leave the Ross Quarry, get back in the car, and head over to the Candoro Marble Company.
South Knoxville in the neighborhood of Vestal. By the end of the 19th century, there were about a dozen marble companies operating quarries. Many of these companies had subsidiaries. While their main operations were quarrying and extracting marble, they also needed other ancillary businesses: shipping marble, cutting marble, polishing marble, and crafting. One of those companies was the John J. Craig Company. Craig Company operated several quarries in Knoxville, and in 1878 established a subsidiary company called the Candoro Marble Company. Candoro Marble Company was responsible for cutting the marble and polishing the marble. The company continued on in that business model through the 19-teens. And then by the 1920s, the company hired a number of Italian immigrant master craftsmen to expand their decorative marble inventory. By the turn of the century, major Knoxville marble production companies had started to import marble, not just relying on local Tennessee, preferably pink marble, but had started to import marble from Europe and South America. The demand for their marble products was growing, and they wanted to expand their high-end products with imported marble. So the Candoro Marble Company, by the first decades of the 20th century, hired skilled Italian immigrants who served as master craftsmen, working at companies like Candoro to produce art pieces, frescoes, decorative elements for buildings out of marble. Let's take a look at the Candoro Marble Company itself. Now, the building I'm going to show you, as we approach it via the cedar-lined pathway on the grounds of the Candoro Marble Company, the building is their 1923 showroom. The showroom was built entirely out of marble and iron fixtures, and so what we want to do is take a look at the structure itself in just a moment. The building in front of you is the showroom for the Candoro Marble Company. The showroom was built in 1923. The building was designed by celebrated Knoxville architect Charles Barber. The design is a Beaux Arts style that was popular in the 1920s and 1930s, although an addition, the marble shed to the left, in an Italianate style, which is fitting given that master marble craftsman Alberto Mellini was responsible for cutting and building much of the structure's marble. We're going to take a look at some of those details in a moment. Now, due to the pandemic, the building itself is closed. The building, listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1996, is home to the Kandoro Arts and Heritage Center. So let's take a look at some of the architectural features. The first thing to note are those two features on either side of the door. They look like columns, but similar to the front facade of D.D. Doherty on the Appalachian State campus. They're not freestanding, and so they are mock columns or pilasters. Above the door is a crest with floral and vegetal finishes on each side. And then all along under the eave line of the roof, a squared sawtooth dentling. And if we look at the corner of the dentling, and this is the same on each of the four corners of the building, there's a small vegetal feature dangling down between the dentling. Finally, on the south side of the structure, between the main bank of windows of the showroom, there's a series of carved urns as the bases of more pilasters. The urn forms the base, and a series of 3 leaves provides a vegetal design enwrapping the base of the column, which then ends with a band and more vegetal patterning at the capital of the pilaster.
Just like other marble companies in Knoxville, the Kandoro Marble Company relied on both skilled and unskilled labor. Next, let's head out to the Marble City neighborhood of Knoxville to take a look at the landscape of Marble Company worker housing.
Currently in the neighborhood of Knoxville, known after 1910 as Marble City. Given the nearby location is several marble cutting and polishing mills, as well as transportation facilities for shipping Knoxville marble out of the region, such as via, right behind me, railroad tracks for, at the time, the East Tennessee and Virginia Railroad. One of the other spin-off effects of Knoxville's marble industry was the creation of neighborhoods for marble company workers. In South Knoxville, back near the Kandoro Marble Company, small houses line narrow, twisting streets running up the ridge between the Kandoro marble grounds and the Tennessee River. For many of these workers, opportunities were available not only at the Kandoro plant, but other nearby marble cutting mills and factories such as the Knoxville Glove Factory on Scottish Pike. What I want to do here in the Marble City neighborhood is take you around a few blocks to show you how these neighborhoods were not only rows of small houses, and you'll see small houses in just a moment, but they also had their own community centers, their own infrastructure, not only roads, but local stores, general stores, barber shops, and churches. I'm now about a block north of my previous location at the railroad tracks, near the corner of Varner Street and Van Deventer Streets in Marble City. The houses in Marble City were built roughly between the late 1880s, 1890s, and the 1920s, 1930s. Many of them take on some classic Upland South vernacular architectural styles, such as the house here, for instance. If you look at the house, 1 story, 2x2, or almost a single bay. Most of these houses are basically single bay with an entrance either central or to a side, providing workers a chance to have a front parlor and other living space to the rear. Sometimes, but not always, to a half floor, half story above for sleeping quarters. If you look at the roof line, it has this sharp pitched roof in the middle. We have a portion to the rear that has a single bay right there where the V of the roof comes down on the side of the structure. And then the forward portion of the house, maybe even a later addition, at the top has a very traditional Upland South architectural style of a pyramid-shaped roof. That kind of joining together of steeply pitched roof lines coming at a very high crest to the roof is a common architectural feature in East Tennessee, southwestern Virginia. walk a little bit further up the street, we're going to start to see some variation. And the variation we see in architectural styles, in part, if you remember in our class, we looked at Stuart Brand's book, How Buildings Learn, and those forces that are always pushing around structures, including money, style, and function. In this case, we have a older pyramid-style roof home. The opposite side of the street, we have a much smaller and humbler single-bay central. House over here, in contrast to the house with the pyramid-shaped roof on this side of the street, this house is what we call a craftsman style. It was a style popular in the early 20th century, around the 19-teens. The porch on this house has been modified. You can see the footers, the brick footers, and then everything else, the supports and the balustrade, the railing, are all wood. Those are all more recent replacements. Traditionally designed craftsmen would have had relatively thick supports and relatively thick posts supporting the front roof. As you can tell, the exterior siding has been replaced. Finally, back on Sutherland Avenue, which served as the main street for the Marble City neighborhood, were two churches, a Baptist church down the road, that direction, and what was at one time a United Brethren church here. The United Brethren were a German sect that, over the course of the 19th century, slowly aligned with the theology and practices of the Methodist Church, and by 1968 merged with the Methodists to form the United Methodist Church. And so for years, this used to be Marble City United.
Since every Knoxvillian under the sun decided to take Sutherland Avenue at that very moment, and the traffic did not abate for about 15 to 20 minutes, I decided it was probably time to head over to our last stop, in the Fort Sanders neighborhood, and take a look at one more way Tennessee marble had an impact on the landscape of late 19th and early 20th century Knoxville.
Sanders neighborhood of Knoxville. Today in Knoxville, Fort Sanders is known as a neighborhood next to the campus of the University of Tennessee, full of housing for students. Older homes converted, partitioned into multiple apartments, and a growing number of newer, high-end condo complexes with rooftop pools. But that wasn't the case in 1863. In 1863, Fort Sanders was an empty area next to the small town of Knoxville in the midst of the Civil War. In 1863, the United States government had retaken control of Knoxville and Upper East Tennessee, but the situation in Southeast Tennessee around Chattanooga was much more fluid and contested between the Union armies and the Confederacy. In September of 1863, the Army of the Cumberland was defeated by Confederate forces at the Battle of Chickamauga and retreated to Chattanooga. Pitched battles for the control of Chattanooga occurred between October and November of 1863. Meanwhile, further north in Knoxville, Union forces had sought to fortify the town, creating a series of artillery positions on high ridges surrounding the town and the Tennessee River, and one main garrison here on a hill behind me that was later named Fort Sanders. On November 29, 1863, Confederate forces under the command of Lieutenant General James Longstreet laid siege to the Union bastion of Fort Sanders. United States forces under the command of Major General Ambrose Burnside were successful in repulsing the Confederate attack and securing Knoxville and Upper East Tennessee for the rest of the Civil War. At the same time that Burnside's forces were repulsing the Confederate assault, Union forces from the Army of the Cumberland and the Army of the Tennessee defeated Confederate forces in Chattanooga at the Battle of Missionary Ridge, securing the whole of East Tennessee for the rest of the Civil War as, once again, part of Union. Fort Sanders itself, while awash in college student housing, does maintain a number of historical markers commemorating the events of the Battle of Fort Sanders. Of note, several of these markers, commemorating either side in the battle, relied on locally sourced Tennessee marble. For instance, the United Daughters of the Confederacy, Knoxville chapter, erected a monument to the Confederate soldiers who fell in the assault on Fort Sanders. Of note, this is an early Confederate monument. Many Confederate monuments erected across the United States, places as far away as Minnesota. Think about that for a moment. A considerable number were erected during the 1950s as a white nationalist response to the Supreme Court case, Brown versus Board of Education, as well as efforts during the Civil Rights era to integrate American society. Meanwhile, about one block east of Confederate Monument stands a monument to the 9th New York Infantry. The hands that once were raised in strife now clasp a brother's hand, as long as flow the tide of life, in peace, in toil, when war is rife, we shall as brothers stand, one heart, one soul, for our free land. J.I.C. Clark. 1st Brigade, 9th Corps, and 1st Division, serving under the command of James Burnside, the Army of the Ohio. This tour of Fort Sanders is not to simply go through the Civil War history of Knoxville. What matters for us and the marble industry of southern Appalachia is what happened after the Civil War. During Reconstruction, Fort Sanders remained an abandoned bastion or outpost on top of a hill to the west of downtown. But Knoxville's fortunes were changing. Knoxville's economy was booming. People were moving to Knoxville from the rural countryside, and as that new South ethos overtook Knoxville, generating substantial amounts of wealth, folks started to move out of the downtown area along the Cumberland Road, which is now known as Cumberland Avenue or the Cumberland Avenue Strip. The first homes on the Cumberland Road, immediately west of downtown, were large mansions. By the mid-1870s, however, into the early 1880s, that residential landscape began to change. Roads started to open into Fort Sanders area, even into the old bastion of the fort itself. Part of that difference was, like this behind me, the construction all over what became the Fort Sanders neighborhood of wealthy homes. Now, the Fort Sanders area itself, the topography is fairly hilly. There's that one large ridge on Laurel and Highland Avenues where I stood in front of the Battle of Fort Sanders marker. And so as these homes started to cover the area that was once the battlefield of Fort Sanders, one marker of wealth and taste was not only a stately home, but it was also a well-kept yard, planted gardens, and at the edge of the yard, where there was simply a dirtless road, this. A stone wall of retaining blocks made from Tennessee marble. Now, these are a little different than the Tennessee marble that would be used for mantelpieces, tabletops, or interior tile work, or even structural components like walls. This is marble from the top portions of quarry. Junky, filled with fissures and cracks. Material that would not lend itself very well to polishing and cutting the way that marble deeper in lower strata of the quarry could. The market only expanded through the end of the 19th century as more and more middle-class and upper-middle-class homes, not only in Fort Sanders, but in other nearby new neighborhoods, including Old North Knoxville, north of town, along Broadway, and the 4th and Guild neighborhood, the northeast of town, also had demand for these types of marble retaining walls. Of note, in the mid-1890s, the Knoxville City Council passed an ordinance requiring homeowners to maintain the sidewalks in front of their house. And that meant for homeowners with downsloping yards, if your downsloping yard started to erode or wash dirt onto the sidewalk, it was your responsibility to clean that dirt up to keep Knoxville not scruffy. It's a slogan for the town. Anyway, one easy way to deal with that? These walls. So, by the 1890s, the Knoxville marble industry had found an outlet for its lowest quality products. Now, here's the thing. You trace the historical record, look through archives, look through newspaper advertisements, look through old bills of sale for the existing records, the few existing records we have of Knoxville marble companies. You do not find reference to the sale and installation of these stone retaining walls. What was most likely the case, and this is kind of a rule of thumb when researching businesses in the 19th century and social life, especially in the South, but everywhere in the United States in the 19th century, is if you have material evidence of some activity, widespread as it may be in the case of these marble retaining walls in Knoxville, but there's no published records, then you need to start thinking that perhaps that this was an African-American endeavor. This was African-American businessmen who were engaged in this cutting, or at least certainly in the installation of these stone walls. Among the Knoxville residents I've spoken with about these stone walls, only one, had a vague memory of when they were a child in the 1940s, their father telling him, this informant, about when he was younger, how his parents, so we're playing telephone game, how when he was younger, when this informant's father was younger, his family lived in Fort Sanders and remembered having a new segment of the marble retaining wall placed in front of their house, and that the work crew and the gentlemen that his father contracted with were all African Americans. Does that mean going back into the 1870s that the responsibility for placing these walls was in the hands of African Americans in Knoxville? Not necessarily, but it's a good guess. So if we take a look at the walls themselves, you can see here that there's two different colors of Tennessee marble, or junky limestone, let's just call it. There's the light gray and then a beige underneath. So this wall has been reconstructed over the years. It's doubtful that very many of the walls in Fort Sanders retain their original integrity, but there are some features of this Knox gray and then the more beigey and somewhat pink.
So that just about does it for our exploration of Tennessee marble. From its history, to the development of the marble industry around Knoxville, to its various points of impact on the southern Appalachian landscape, from quarries to mills to neighborhoods for marble workers, to its use around even wealthier neighborhoods. Following this, please pay attention to Week 2, Activity 1B, which is basically some brief questions for you to answer about this video. Take care.